You mentioned a couple of things there that I wondered if you could tell us a little bit more about. One is the challenges that you face ensuring that your data is clean and usable. If there are specifics there, and then the second is about ethics and the ethical considerations about how you use this personal data, I guess, on one level, and who owns it. So cleaning data and ethics of data, if you wouldn't mind.
So cleaning data, getting the data in shape, is really what we do. That's almost the main core of what our innovation is about. So we obviously, once we got, I'll come back to the ethics of the access, but once we've got through that bit and we got access to the data, some of the clinical questions I knew that we wanted to answer early on, and then we could understand what we're going to do downstream with the data. And so we actually engaged a very good data analyst. We created a secure data environment where you can log in with the appropriate credentials, but you've also got very strong anonymization of the data, so it can't be linked back to individuals and so on. And so I said, okay, can we find a relationship between these various components of longitudinal data? And this is what we published last year. And actually, because of the data cleansing issues and the data quality issues, it took quite a long time, because every time you try and get a computer program, if you like, to run against a big data set like that, it pops up an error. So, and some of those errors are important errors to understand because there's clinical meaning as to why you're getting that error. And other of them are it's just data quality. We haven't ditched the stuff that's been loaded incorrectly into the system. So we worked through that. And that was essentially a 6-month project to come up with some really good insights into what the data were telling us. And that was stuff we took and published last year as to the real power of the longitudinal data. But it also told us this is a long time. This is one of the reasons why we find it so difficult just to pay an analyst to open up the data warehouse and start finding what we need, because it's not there in a form that can be used. We now run those same algorithms and many, many millions more in about 6 seconds. So what was taking 6 months is now taking about 6 seconds. And sometimes I call it 6 seconds because sometimes it's 3 and sometimes it's 10. And I think it's just a nice round number that it took us 6 months to do the work originally. And all of that improvement, there's been some great engineering by our app developers who developed the system to make it run well. But most of it is exactly what you're talking about. It's about cleansing the data and storing it away, prepped for the questions we know are clinically relevant. Now, what we haven't done is narrowed that down too much. So if an analyst has the software tools, they can pretty much ask any question of the data set. It's almost an infinite number of different questions you can ask. With our system, it's not infinite, but it's still a big number. So it's not narrowed down so much that there's only one way of looking for what are you looking for. There's a huge amount of flexibility. I should calculate, there's about 10 to the 16 different ways we could express that calculation. So, but 10 to 16 is a long way off infinite. So we just got that, we're looking for that sweet spot between constraining what the end user can actually do with the data and making it so massive and so difficult and so untidy and you can't do anything. And that's what we're looking for. But and a lot of that is about data cleansing, and you're going to lose some. So you're going to lose some because you have to discard, if you can't identify who the patient is for that blood test, if the NHS number is corrupt, you have to delete that line. So inevitably it's a bit lossy. You lose some information in there. And if from a purist academic point of view, people start to say, whoa, how do we know that accurate? We've lost 1 to 2% of our data items here overall. And I'm saying, yeah, but there's 98% of it's good, and we can find people, and it's not a perfect way of finding people, but it's an awful lot better than we've already got. And there's a bit of pragmatism thrown in to make sure that we're not wasting that. We'll put a huge amount of effort into making it just perfect and pure from that point of view. And then you asked me about the ethics of all this, because that's where it started. And that was the most challenging bit of the project, was getting all the people who needed to agree that data access was a good idea. And we started asking all the people questions about the mechanisms of that, the mechanics of doing that. I had in the former life been a cortical guardian. That's the usually the senior doctor in an organization with the data ethics hat on. So kind of had some background, but even that had changed a lot. So since I'd done that role, and between that role and this project, GDPR had come in. So there's a whole different kettle of fish from a legal regulatory point of view. One of the things we did start with early on, though, was our patient and public engagement group. So that's a critical part of any project like this. We have a very active group of interested members of the public and interested patients who are a voice on our shoulder, telling us what we're doing right, telling us what we're doing wrong, telling us to work harder, usually telling us to do this faster. So we put together an introductory meeting where I explained as clearly as I could what I thought the problem was, what the data would look like, and what I thought the solution might look like, and what we'd need to do with their personal, identifiable, private, secret healthcare data to find people with liver disease who'd been essentially overlooked by the system, not by an individual, but by the system. And the response there was really interesting. Because the response was, what do you mean you're not doing this already? It kind of surprised me. I was hoping to be able to persuade this group of 30 individuals who we'd bribe with a cup of tea and a car parking ticket. And actually, we had some biscuits as well. So that's probably not very liver friendly, but whatever. I was expecting a hard sell, but I was hoping I was going to be able to sell it. And it was almost like, what do you mean? You should have done this ages ago. You mean there's all this data and you're not... We went to the GP, stuck out our arm and had a blood test, needle, that's painful, doc. That's painful, that hurt. And you're telling me you haven't actually acted on all the results and all the information that's in there. And that was the response we got. And that's the response we continued to get. Although it's evolved into the work harder, work faster output of every one of our public engagement groups is that, yeah, we think it's all interesting what you're doing, but you've got more to do. You've got to work. You've got to get out there and find more patients and treat more patients. So that's the ethics side of it was really helpful. Some of the pushback is also really interesting. So some of the pushback is, well, look, everyone's fat these days. You just go out, you're medicalizing the new normal. And I've had that from very respected, very senior clinicians saying, you're wasting your time here. This is medicalizing liver disease. Everyone's got it these days. So why should we worry? We'll answer because it's not good for you and we need to do something about it. So that's a pushback. There is a regulatory pushback because people get into trouble for what they do with data. And very few people get kind of praised for doing the right thing with data, for flexing the rules a bit and so on. So we knew we were never going to be able to flex the rules and bend the rules. And so there's a whole load of regulatory things that you need to go through to access the data and ultimately come up with probably the most complex and difficult to write document I've ever written, which is the impact assessment, the data protection document that you need to write for a project like this, that covers off all the potential hazards and pitfalls and the what ifs and what if that happens and stuff could go wrong. And so you've got to have a good risk assessment and you've got to have all the security controls in place. And that was another reason. So data ethics and governance, then morphs into security, and that was another reason for engaging developers, a professional group, professional company, knew exactly what they're doing, who work in this space regularly, so our partners in this, who understand the healthcare landscape, the healthcare data landscape, have got all the tools for security and so on, and understand the importance of keeping this data ultra secure. And I think by demonstrating we've gone through each of those steps, we've unlocked this. But it took pretty much the first year of the project to unlock that.
It's really inspiring to hear, and I think one of the phrases that I've heard you talk about before and read about you is, this isn't you going to the doctor, it's the doctor coming to you, and in your patient and public engagement group, so encouraging to hear. Them welcoming, slightly chastising you for not having done it before, or the medical profession, the NHS, for not having done it before.